The city answered refusal with paper. By morning, the square was freckled with notices pasted over brick and beam, each inked in the guild's neat blue that pretended to be calmer than people. Jarek read one because not reading was a way of letting someone else decide what it said. He traced the title with a thumb he kept from shaking. Directive 43. Emergency Warden Levy. Unlicensed forging prohibited within populated lanes. All anomalous heat signatures subject to immediate containment for public safety. Presentation for measure required at marked posts 3 bells after mid non-compliance will be recorded as hostile. Paper teeth. He tasted iron anyway. Varric stood at his shoulder with the posture of a man who had already fought the paper and was deciding whether to fight the post it rode in on. His crimson eye clicked once as he scanned the lines for the sentence that mattered and did not find it. They will tag what they cannot cage, he said. And call it kindness. The hunger prowled in Jarek's chest with an interest that was not quite joy. They brought a net. Let me show you how to bite through nets. The small cords go first. The big ones tighten after on their throats. Jarek kept his hands in his pockets until the urge to call chains subsided. The 7 rings had started the day humming instead of scraping. The band on his wrist carried the span's tempered line like a quiet thread. He did not want to ruin the little steadiness he had bought. The pear seller arrived with 2 baskets and a glare she used like a broom. She read the notice out loud for the benefit of anyone who could not or would not. Measure posts. That means the blue fences and the boys with the slates. She swung her chin toward Jarek. You won't queue for that. I won't, he said. Good, she said. Bring me a hammer. It felt like relief. He found her one that had been a pipe once and fit the hand because the hand had made it so. She pried a notice off her stall and smacked it flat on the ground with the hammer wrapped in cloth so it would not start a door out of spite. Then she put her heel on the paper and ground it until the blue streaked like a bruise. It matters, she said, seeing his look. If the city only hears their sentences, it forgets ours. Across the square, gang brass shone under grime. The forge rats had dressed themselves taller, as men do after public humiliation. Bent Ear shouted orders with a bandage under his hair. The cult took their places by the fountain, black flames cupped like secrets. A pair of guild scribes exchanged the blank faces of men who had decided ahead of time not to be moved by anything they had to write down. Captain Voss did not show at once. The square knew she was near because it behaved, fewer knives out where eyes could see, fewer boys with quick hands. When she did come, it was in a wedge that looked like it had learned to be smaller while still being itself. She did not call for silence. Paper had tried that for her. Her visor lifted enough for a mouth that did not smile. 3 bells after mid, she announced, not shouting. Measure begins. Bring your bodies and your lies. I need to tell you where not to stand when the machines sing. Murmurs moved, the wedge held their shape in the way good walls do, by giving space at the right edge so pressure lets itself out. Voss's eyes found Jarek. If she was relieved to see him and not the chaos someone else would sell under his name, she did not show it. We talk, she said. They ducked under a collapsed arch into a short run where water talked to itself and no one else wanted to listen. Voss set her palm against the wall like a woman who is tired of carrying everything with her back. You know what this means. Cages, Jarek said. Worse, Voss said. Numbers that build cages later. We do the sweep, we log the heat, we write where it breathed, then men I do not like build a thing with my lines and tell me it is mine. Varric leaned on stone that had leaned on him before. How deep does your ledger let you choose today? Deeper than yesterday, Voss said dryly. Less than never. She did not look away from Jarek. Don't be in the square when the bells finish. Teach the people your thin tricks now. Chalk. Elbows. Float a ring over a bowl. If they see you do it at 3 bells, I'll have to pretend not to, and I'm too tired to lie beautifully today. You could call it off, Jarek said, knowing she could not. Voss lifted one shoulder the width of a sigh. If I walk my wedge away, Mail will call it surrender and crown herself. Ilya will stand on an awning and call restraint proof of doctrine. Bent ear will beat a drum and the door will open just to spite the rhythm. A day's peace pays for a week of coffins. She tapped her gorget where the bars had gone soft long ago. I will clear what I can from the posts before the boys with cleaner boots arrive. But after the sweep, an auditor comes with an annulus. Do you know that word? No, Jarek said. Circle of measure, she said. A ring big enough to sit a square inside. It scrapes every heat it finds and licks the shape. If you stand under it, it names you to the ceiling for later. That is all it does today. She paused a moment to be honest. That is not all it will do tomorrow. Varrick's crimson eye clicked like a clock cut off at the minute before the hour. Name. Magistrate Rend, Voss said. He collects signatures like teeth. He'll show you the mouth he made with them if you ask. She fixed Jarek with the look she reserved for men who could only be scolded by the hope they could do better. Leave before the annulus stands. If you must stand, stand not where my men will have to pretend you were heir. Jarek nodded. It felt like a decision that walked with its own feet. We'll teach until then. Voss stepped back into work without looking satisfied. Thank you, she said. It sounded like cursing whatever she had loved about the job when she was new. They taught. Varrick drew circles and then made the children draw them better. Jarek showed the band, then set it aside so it wouldn't become the lesson. They took bowls from the soup line and made the water float a ring. When it sank, they laughed as if failure were an aunt who brought gifts you did not want and loved you anyway. Jarek showed 7-count breathing and how to stitch it under speech so the wrong men could not hear your counting. He taught palms to feel where iron remembers truth. He set hands on grates and told them to listen for seams without becoming announcements. He gave the pear seller a thin brass loop rounded from a wire hanger and watched her float it as if the act were insulting in the right way. You do this at 3 bells, he said to the crowd he did not want. You do it in your stalls, not under the posts. You do it so the annulus scrapes air and eats chalk dust. You do it so it writes the day wrong on purpose. Will it work? Someone asked. It will help, he said. He had learned to love that sentence. It tasted like work, not miracles. The hunger sat with its paws tucked under, unimpressed. Teaching is kindling that refuses to burn fast. I want beams. He ignored it until it began to purr out of spite. 3 bells after mid arrived with the inevitability of a debt. The measure posts unfolded where Voss had marked them, 3 latticed masts that hummed with the guild's careful cruelty. Blue light spread like thin rain between them. The wedge moved as walls move when they must hold a crowd and still be floors for their own feet. Voss spoke to her men in lines too steady to be called mercy and not cruel enough to be called law. Magistrate Rend arrived the way a paper does when you're not invited to read it. His armor was brushed to polite luster, his face carried the pallor of rooms that do not forgive sweat. 4 enforcers at his shoulders wore the extra bolts that tell a city which men are allowed to break it. Rend carried no weapon in his hands. His ring was the annulus and it rode his voice. Begin the sweep, he said, not loudly. The blue masts brightened. The lattice raised to a dome that just grazed the tops of stalls and the bent rim of the fountain. People murmured and then tried to make their murmur sound like silence so the dome would not take it for heat. Jarek stood at the square's lip where shadows layered like cloth. Varrick flanked his left, the pear seller took post at his right with a bowl, a ring, and the certainty of a woman holding her own table against a wind. The children planted themselves near each measure post with chalk caked along their fingers like gloves. They did not look at Jarek. That was part of the trick. The annulus sang. It was nothing like the iron choir. It had no grief in it, no memory of labor, no voices. It was a single note that had been cleaned until it had no dust left, and then cleaned again until it had no corners and could slip through skin without being felt. When it touched chalk rings on stone and the bright nerve of the band on Jarek's wrist, it stuttered. Not much. Enough to log a lie. Voss walked the line while pretending not to. She barked once when a boy put his hands too close to the lattice and scolded a scribe into stepping back because method is not a shield against the part of a crowd that bites. Rand found Jarek without looking, which is a trick men learn in rooms where their names are said before they arrive. He approached with gentlemanly distaste for dust, stopping a polite distance away as if addressing a man across a table. "You are the anomaly," he observed with a smile he had signed too often. "I am Jarek," Jarek said. "Anomalies prefer names," Rand allowed. "Your captain has written yours many times in the past week." He turned his head a fraction toward Voss as if expecting gratitude for noticing she existed. "We could call you in," he continued. "We could write a seat for you and pretend it was always yours. You could show us where to put the posts so they do not offend your sensibilities." His chin dipped to the band. "You could let us measure and build you a safer cage." Varric's knife noiselessly found a nearer air. The pear seller's breath shortened to a hiss only she heard. The hunger lifted its head, intrigued by this new prey that smelled like paper and old blood. "Bite this one. He is all throat." Jarek kept his voice steady. "You want me quiet?" "I want you useful," Rand said, unbothered by hearing himself out loud. "Quiet follows utility." His gaze moved past Jarek to the square with the benevolence of a man who has not had to carry a street without writing it first. "It is disorder that kills, not discipline. You draw attention. The city bends toward the places you stand and forgets everything else." He gestured around with a small grace that could have been talent in another life. "Let my lattice sing and I will write a map that keeps you from being where men die." Jarek raised his arm so the thin ring caught the annulus's light. It wavered. "Your map will put me where you want my shadow to be," he said. "And then you will move the posts a finger at a time until you own the circles the children draw." Rand's smile warmed to something like pity. "There are no children in ledgers," he said. "Only totals." He nodded to the nearest mast. "Step under. Be measured. I will log you as a tool." "Paper cannot decide what a hand is," Jarek said. "Paper decides who inherits the hand when it fails," Rand said. He looked to Voss again. "Captain, your anomaly refuses in public. Have you forgotten how to set a line?" Voss's visor hid her eyes for a beat too long to be safe. When she spoke, she did it like a woman who would later have to rephrase herself on a document and pretend she had meant this first. If this story has you listening this far, subscribe to Azure Inkblade so the next chapter finds you instead of getting buried. It helps us keep making more of these every week. Now, back to the chapter. "Sir," she said, "the sweep reads cleaner if it runs without disturbances." Rand regarded her as if evaluating an instrument for calibration. "You will remove the disturbance, then," he said. Jarek saw the moment the room asked Voss to choose which future to pay for. He stepped before she could spend herself. "No need," he said. "I am leaving." Rand's surprise was small, an eyebrow considering disobedience and finding it unoriginal. "Wise," he said smoothly. "See to it he does, Captain." They went. Not far. Far enough. The square watched without pretending not to. The annulus sang itself toward stillness. Chalk circles floated rings like prayers that made no god but memory. At the edge of the market, trouble arrived from the side street that had learned to love trouble. Forge rats in a knot, bent ear in front, faces set in the shape men wear when they are tired of being embarrassed. Behind them, 3 boys with blank eyes and knives wore shirts cut to show off more scar than muscle, the new kind of rumor Ilya's speeches made. Sister males faithful threaded behind, their flames small and instructive, their smiles sails. Bent ear pointed at Jarek without ceremony. "You made me kneel," he snarled. You called me dog in front of my men. I called you nothing, Jarek said. Same thing when the crowd decides it, Bent Ear said. He tossed something toward Jarek's feet. It clattered like prophecy. Another crown, this one worked out of proper iron with crude competence, its points filed like teeth. Wear it, he said. Or we wear you to the post like a bell. Varric shifted the knife to a place it knew. The pear seller's hand fell to her small blade. The hunger rose with interest. It had the bad manners to call love. Yes. Make an example. Late mercy is just permission wearing perfume. Jarek reached down, picked up the crown, and turned it in his hands so the points glinted. He felt the annulus on the square behind him, humming patient. He felt the band try to be calm against the metal's heat. He looked up at Bent Ear. If I put this on, you'll walk behind me, he said. If I throw it back, you'll try to walk over me. Third choice. Bent Ear laughed, spitting to show he had spare water. There isn't one. Jarek set the crown on the cobbles and stepped on it. Iron shrieked. He did not smash it. He bent it the way one bends wire into a ring that will float. When he lifted his boot, what lay there was no longer a crown. It was a band, ugly, thick, honest. He picked it up and held it toward Bent Ear. Hold this to the next door that spits in your face, he said. If it makes the spit fall faster, keep it. If it takes too long, bring it back and I'll show you how to breathe while you wait. The square made the low sound people make when they want to laugh and are not brave enough to. Bent Ear looked furious at first because he had been denied a moment his men would have carved into the wall under their brains. Then he looked confused because the thing in Jarek's hand was useful and he recognized that against his will. He swore the kind of oath men take to convince rooms they are not thinking. Later, he said, and backed away because the lattice hummed and the boys with knives had not learned how to look at two threats at once. Mail drifted close enough that Jarek could feel the wrong heat of her small flames. Refusal, she breathed, delighted. The word sells itself when you touch it. She glanced at the annulus with disdain, well rehearsed. Be measured, be caged, be named. What poetry! You should stand under it and make it sing your name instead. You should learn a new song, Jarek said, and walked away before the conversation made another crown out of boredom. The sweep ended. The posts dimmed. Rand made a signature in the air with his wrist that meant the paper would bear the day and the day would pretend it had always been paper. The wedge unstuck. Voss remained, visor up, mouth set. She did not come to Jarek. She turned and did the work that keeps ordinary men from being crushed by the orders meant for extraordinary problems. They returned to the den through lanes that had learned their steps. Chalk circles at the thresholds hummed a greeting the way string hums when tuned near a note it knows. Inside, the air tasted like iron filing and bred the opposite of prophecy. Paper watches, Varric said finally, sitting on the bench like a man trying to remember if his bones had been registered. It will come again with different teeth. Jarek rubbed his wrist until the band's heat softened to the skins. Let it, he said. We'll sand them dull. That night the square did not sleep. It paced. The gangs sharpened knives to distract themselves from thinking. The cult held a quiet service in the corner of a tunnel and sold the word refusal like sweet bread under a new name. Guild scribes delivered their reports with the calm of men who had learned that being the messenger hurts less if you don't read what you carry. Near dawn, a knock came that was not a knock. 3 touches to stone. A scrape. Varric went to the arch. Voss stood there with her helmet in her hand. The lamps behind her made her look like a coin worn smooth by years of being passed around. Warrant of containment, she said without throat clearing. Rand had it written before he came. He waited for you to refuse. She held out a folded sheet with seals that pretended to be wax and were not. I signed the line that says we attempted capture and failed. Her mouth tilted into something that might have been an apology if it had had fewer teeth. We failed like men who didn't want to succeed. Jarek did not touch the paper. How long? Until they send someone worse, Voss said. He will bring a cleaner annulus and an argument that uses bigger words and fewer faces. She set the sheet on the bench and left her hand on it a heartbeat, as if she could pin it there forever. Move the den, she said. Change your lanes. Teach more of your little tricks to people who will not sell them. And when the door opens where he thinks a stage will hold, make sure you are somewhere that isn't a stage. Varric nodded as if to a plan he had already begun carving into the back of his head. We have a place that pretends to be a drain, he said. Substation Grey. The pipes hum there like a patient animal. Not many know the way. Voss blew out a breath and made her face an order again. When you go, don't take the path you love. Leave me a chalk mark that looks like children and I will read it wrong in public. She put the helmet on, and in that act removed the person and replaced her with the rank. Eat, she added, as if the word were armor. You fight better fed. She left. The den breathed. The hunger patted a circle as if testing the new room it had been given. Move. Jarek asked. Tonight, Varric said. After we make the market forget us for a day. They spent the morning breaking habits into pieces they could carry. Jarek scrubbed chalk rings until they looked like stains. He taught the girl from the pump hall to draw the circle at the den's arch and then erase it with the heel of her palm in the rhythm of a 7 count so the stone would remember and not show off. He repacked the bench's knives into places that did not look like places knives should fit. He left the bowl and took the band because bowls are more honest than men when questioned. At midday, the pear seller came with a sack of pears and a small jar of grease. For the hinges you pretend you don't have, she said, shoving both into Jarek's arms. And for your mouth when it forgets to say thank you. Thank you, he said. Too late, she said. But acceptable. Children arrived without being called and began to carry little things in the pattern of a game. One moved a pile of rags. Another stole 3 nails from a place where they had been kept on purpose and hid them under a plank that had always fussed and now sat like a dog told to heel. The apprentices from East Run returned a wrench Jarek had never loaned and left with instructions about a valve that had learned to lie. By evening, the den looked like a room someone had loved yesterday and would love again someday but had to stop thinking about for a while. They went by lanes that did not learn names easily. Varric took the lead with the steady speed of a man hiding how much his body wanted to run. Jarek walked mid, the band warm under his sleeve, the 7 rings turning in a way that meant they were listening. The pear seller carried the grease and the knife and swore at a rat that had the temerity to share her path. The children bobbed like shadows you could hear if you knew the rhythm of their feet. Substation Grey lived under a slab of the city that had once meant to be a square and had been demoted to a roof. The entrance was a hatch no one had bothered to lock because locks are invitations in the city. Inside, pipes big enough to crawl through ran like the ribs of a sleeping animal. The air was damp and warm, the kind of heat that makes hands cooperate with tools. The room where they would sleep was shaped like a question asked quietly. They lit 1 lamp. 2 at most would make the pipes sing too loudly. Jarek set the band on the floor and watched it hum with the iron. The hunger sniffed the corners and then lay near the hatch like a cat put out from the bed and deciding to forgive later. Varric stowed knives in a grid a man could walk in with his eyes closed. The pear seller counted the pears allowed to shame theft and then handed 1 to each of the thieves as pay. They ate. Bread that had not yet remembered to be hard. Pears that were too small for pride. Cheese that knew its value and did not apologize for it. Jarek chewed until chewing was breath and breath was 7 and 7 was the little door to quiet. Tomorrow, he asked. Varric wiped the blade with the cloth he used when he wanted to think his hands were busy and not his head. We go back, he said. We build what we meant to build before paper tried to own the plan. Jarek nodded. Anchors, he said. Not in maps. In people. Rings over bowls. Names that don't need slates. A thread from stall to stall so when the annulus sings, the square sings back. And when Ilya calls a choir again, Varric added. We sing a different song, Jarek said. He did not say we win. He had learned that songs and winning are different arguments. The lamp smoked and then steadied. The pipes hummed like a throat clearing gently before speaking. Jarek lay back and folded the day under him where it could not fall. He listened for the basin's pulse and found it in the floor. He breathed until the 7 count ran by itself. He slept with paper on the bench in a den one turn away and a warrant folded on top that would say what it said even if no eyes touched it. The city shifted its weight above them and decided how to spend morning. Somewhere, Magistrate Rent sharpened signatures. Somewhere, Sister Mail warmed her hands and counted how many refusals made a tithe. Somewhere, Ilya stood on a beam and promised himself that harmony was just another word for surrender pronounced by men afraid of falling. Here, under pipes the guild had forgotten to worship, Jarek kept turning his rings until they remembered they were not crowns. The hunger watched the hatch and purred, not gently, not cruelly, anticipation disguised as patience. Paper teeth waited. He would pull them one by one if he had to. Tools last longer than thrones. He held to that like a chain. And in the quiet, the band hummed the small truth he had chosen when the bridge had tried to be a stage. Tomorrow would bring the ledger with a new mouth. He would decide what to feed it.